All to order the regular board meeting of September 8th, 2020. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Eckevetti.
Here.
Treasurer Lapata. Here. Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee Deming.
Here.
Trustee Osberg. Here. Clerk Barry is here.
All members are present. Item 4, presentations. One quick announcement is new microphones. Brad means hot. And that goes for the one back at the attorney's stand and the podium. And if there's no light on, they're dead. So if you're not at a red light, it means you're good to go. Item 4, presentations. There are no presentations. Item 5, department reports. We'll start with the board and Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just a quick update from the Planning Commission at our meeting last week. On September 1st, we had an update regarding our master plan. And the timeline kind of rolls out like this. There will be another presentation to the Planning Commission with maps, memos, and such that have sort of the final driver for planning. That will be brought to planning on 9/15. The final draft looks like it will come to the board in October for review, with final approval hopefully occurring in late October. There's a chance that the final approval will come to the board in November with there is a 63-day period that requires adjacent communities an opportunity to weigh in. It doesn't look likely that that timeline will be completed prior to this board's commission expiring, but the master plan is very, very close, and it's now just the sort of formality of the statutory timelines that are required. So good news, it's a very comprehensive document, as you all know, and it looks to be in the final stages, so coming soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Deming.
This is from Library Commission. We have some bad news. Back on Wednesday, September 2nd, Alan Aldred passed away. Alan was a vice president on the Board of Trustees for the library. He'd been on the library board since 2001. Very unexpected passing. We extend our condolences to his family and friends. I also have a directive here from Elizabeth Manson, our library director. With the passing of Mr. Aldred, there is a vacancy on the library board. If anyone is interested in that, they can send a letter to Elizabeth Manson at the library director. That's all. Thank you, sir.
Any further department reports or board updates? Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. We'd just like to update the public. There was, following the August primary election, there was a request for a recount from one of the candidates that was on the August ballot. That recount was conducted by the Macomb County Clerk and their teams on August 27th at 9 a.m. here at the Township offices. The results of that recount did not alter the results. Therefore, all of the updated recount numbers will be posted by the Macomb County Clerk, and there is no further action to be taken on behalf of our office or the Macomb County Clerk's office. Absentee ballots for the upcoming November election will be available in the office on September the 19th. However, the initial mailing for those who have requested the absentee ballots for November will not be done in our office until probably the week of the 28th of September. The reason for that is that it's going to take time for us to process that very large initial batch in order for us to prepare those and get them to the post office. It does take some time to do that. So if you've requested a ballot, you're going to want to look for that ballot to be mailed to you if you requested it by mail to take place at the end of September, beginning of October. In the event that you would like to come into having a problem hearing? We're working with the audio, we have these new microphones, but in the event that you would like to come into the office and receive a ballot, those will be available for you on September the 19th. Thank you.
Treasurer Lafada.
Monday, September the 14th is the last day to pay your summer taxes without penalty. The township has a new blue drop box in place, just waiting for your payment and your convenience.
Any further department reports? Moving on to item number 6. Here is the consent agenda.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 6A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of August 25th, 2020. 6B, approval of the agenda with addendum if necessary. Item 6C, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. Item 6D, approve a recommendation from the Department of Public Safety to purchase 23 Armor Express vests from On Duty Gear in the amount of $16,455 from GL number 205-301-741-000.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of agenda item D to be placed on the regular agenda.
Motion by trustee Joseph, is there support?
Second.
To approve the consent agenda items A, B, and C. Discussion. Questions from the public? Motion by trustee Joseph, support by clerk Berry to approve the consent agenda items A, B, and C. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Trustee Bosford. Aye. Treasurer Lafada.
Aye.
Supervisor Echevetti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
The consent agenda is approved. Item 6D of the consent agenda.
Item 6D is to approve a recommendation from the Department of Public Safety to purchase 23 Armor Express vests from On Duty Gear in the amount of $16,455 from GL number 205-301-741-000.
Do I have a motion?
Just a point of order, Mr. Supervisor, this is still remains on the consent agenda. There's no discussion on the consent
That's,
agenda.
but we need a motion to approve. We approve the consent agenda. There is discussion on the consent agenda. If you remove an item, which we did. So now I just need a motion to approve and a support to approve item 6D, and we can discuss it as a normal.
Motion to approve?
Support?
Motion by trustee Joseph, support by trustee Domingue. I see Director Kirsten lead his way up to the podium, and trustee Joseph.
Thank you. I reached out to Director Kirsten prior to the agenda, well, after the agenda was submitted. In particular, I know, just by way of history, the vests have a shelf life. They retire, they're good for so long, and then you sort of bake into your annual budget replacement as they expire. Sometimes we may lose a few in a year, or in this case, there just happened to be 23 that all expired at the same time. I wanted this removed from the consent agenda because I'd like to have residents know what their public safety SAD money is going for, and it's a decent expenditure. And I personally, I know, and talking to Trustee Anderson, and I know this is Trustee Domingue's line of work as well. Same thing that happens at the fire station with oxygen tanks that expire. These things have shelf lives. And so wanting to let people see where their money is going, can you describe a little bit about what happens to the vest when it's sort of taken out of commission? Does it have a training value? And what the process is for these expenditures?
You're pretty much covered most of it. Yes, the vest, the body armor does have a shelf life of 5 years. At that 5-year limit, we agreed to replace it. The number 23 is a number that has come up for this year's replacement. Once they're taken out of service, we keep them in-house. We use them as training tools. When we have ride-alongs, we do outfit our ride-alongs, or when a new employee comes in, we outfit them temporarily until the vest is ordered. All of these vests are custom measured, custom designed for each individual officer, so there's some time and effort in tailor them to fit their physique. And then the type of body armor that they select, we give them an option. Obviously, this is worn throughout their career. They get to choose some customizations to it to get them in and out of the cars, make them feel comfortable. The armor that we do have in spare, we retain. We used to export them or donate them to a military component. They've no longer done that, so we've donated the inventory stock to the training academies. We use them on the gun range as spares. Obviously, when we go to the gun range, every officer must wear a vest, so rather than use their new ones, we double up with the spare vests, or at least have the range officers in vests.
Whatever the bullet stopping capability of the vest is at manufacturer, it doesn't cease to be effective. Whatever the effectiveness is, it remains. But the recycling has to do with just the fact that you're wearing a piece of equipment, every shift for 5 years. And it is the manufacturer's sort of recommendations that, from a fit standpoint, you get the optimal fit. After 5 years, that's gone. But in terms of having whatever safety the vest provides for a ride-along or a training, it's still there. It just may not fit as optimally as you would if it were custom fitted.
Correct. Kevlar inside is pretty much the Kevlar, and that's it. They have pretty long shelf life. It's the material or the wraps or the vest carriers that they're placed in. Those get worn down from daily use, and you'll see them. Some officers choose to wear them under their uniform shirt. Some of them use the vest carriers, and they place them there. But the material that it's held in is what's degraded and what you lose over the life of 5 years.
Last thing, Chief, when you submit these, or Director Kirsten, when you submit these expenditures, do you have a preference or make any requests with them being on the consent, or is that something that's made to the clerk's office supervisor? I ask that only because moving forward, I'd like to see these on the regular agenda, just have a discussion that we briefly had tonight.
Yeah, it's usually when we put in an I-Compass, it's kind of a selection of how we approach. I try to have a conversation with Treasurer LaFada before to see how it'd like to be presented. I have no problem doing any expenditures in presenting them to the full board. I truly do.
Thank you.
Trustee Lee.
Armor Express, a good brand, that's,
Absolutely.
is that the one from Illinois?
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
the old,
I think it's
Second
changed
chance.
name. They changed
second chance, trustee Anderson, I would remember.
Point blank, I think they changed name.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any
Yes,
further comments?
we do invest. This is top quality equipment, as we do with all of our equipment.
Any further comments or questions from the board? Comments from the public on item 6E. Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Domingue to approve item 6D as submitted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Bosford.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFada.
Aye.
Supervisor Ekavit.
Aye.
Clerk Barrety. Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Moving on to the regular agenda, item 7A.
Item 7A is a recommendation by the Public Safety Department to approve a second reading and adoption of ordinance number 185, an ordinance amending the Chesterfield Township Code of Ordinances to adopt by reference the Motor Carriers Safety Act of 1963 by reference as an ordinance of the Charter Township of Chesterfield and repealing any and all ordinances and/or resolutions in conflict therewith.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Domingue. Discussion. Questions from the public on item 7A. Final comments from the board. Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Domingue to approve item 7A as submitted. Clerk Barrety, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Bosworth.
Aye.
Treasurer Levon.
Aye.
Supervisor Acovetti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry. Aye.
Motion passes. Item 7B.
Item 7B is to approve the introduction and first publication of ordinance number 183, amending the Chesterfield Township sign ordinance, being sections 52:1 through 52:11 of the Chesterfield Township Code of Ordinances to provide for pedestrian and vehicular safety, prohibiting specified types of signs, providing for provisions regarding sign area, illumination, location standards, permanent signs, temporary signs, and non-conforming signs, and repealing any and all ordinances and/or resolutions in conflict therewith.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk Barry,
Support.
support by Trustee Levon. And there will be a presentation, Director Valens here along with Robert Railroad, our planning consultant, will give this question.
Thank you. This item before you tonight was a project that was approved by the board back in August of 2019. We're here tonight for the adoption process. The primary goal when we started this was a few items. One being changing the permitting process to have it done administratively instead of every single sign going in front of the planning commission to save the applicants some time. Another one was the content neutrality issue that was raised by the Supreme Court a few years ago. With that being said, I'll turn this over to Mr. Arroyo now to highlight some of the changes that were proposed in the draft.
Good evening. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the sign ordinances before you. As Mr. Powell mentioned, there's a number of changes that we were trying to incorporate, addressing some changes in technology, case law, particularly Reed versus the town of Gilbert, as well as a general update of the sign regulations. So the process was we started off working with staff to discuss some of the challenges. We did a draft ordinance. We then took it to the planning commission to get their comments. And then here we are before the township board with the presentation and action. So what's changed? The organization has changed in terms of trying to improve the way the ordinance is in fact structured. There's a more detailed and focused intent statement. One of the things we try to do, particularly with the sign ordinance, is really send a message why we're regulating signs and what are some of the key public health, safety, and welfare items. It's important to do. We've updated the prohibited signs section. We have a new construction of language section, and some updated definitions, and then updating the general provisions as well as permanent and temporary signs sections. And then permits, we've also updated that as well as appeals and variances, getting some of that language up to date. One of the things that's a little different is the calculation of sign area. We're trying to simplify and improve the way the ordinance functions, making it easy for your code enforcement staff to actually measure signs. So we included graphics and made it easier to make that distinction in terms of how sign area is measured. Sign illumination. One of the things that is sometimes the subject of complaint is that signs, when they're illuminated at night, can be too bright. We want to make sure that you have some solid regulations that address that and provide for appropriate illumination of signs. In terms of permanent signs, just kind of a quick overview of how they've we've tried to simplify a lot of the sign regulations in tables so that you can quickly scan if you're looking at non-residential districts or residential districts, or you're looking at permanent signs versus temporary signs. There's a table that goes along with those, so it's really easy at a glance to see what's permitted. And just as an example, a freestanding sign in a non-residential district, there's really no major change in terms of the regulations. Right now, you have a 64 square foot maximum in your C2 to C3 districts. All those things pretty much stayed the same. For driveway signs, they used to be called directional signs, but one of the things we're doing here is we're trying to eliminate content. So if you have to read a sign to figure out what kind of sign it is, then it likely has content in it. So a directional sign would suggest to you that it's got arrows and it's directing you. Here, we're going to call it out for what it is. It's a sign placed at the driveway.
Okay, so it's not content-based, it's place-based. So now you can have a driveway sign up to 3 square feet, which by the way used to be 2 square feet. We're suggesting maybe just a slight bump in that just to make it easier to see those identifying signs at driveways. Wall signs, right now if you're in a non-residential district, there's a formula or 20, right now it's 20 square feet, whichever is greater. We're actually bumping up that minimum from 20 to 24 based upon just some feedback we've gotten. And then the same provisions that currently apply for signs that are set back over 200 feet from the road, those will continue. You get a larger sign if your building happens to be set back farther from the road. And then one change that we've made based on feedback from some recent sign applications is your current ordinance says you get 1 wall sign. That's it. And we're finding that a lot of businesses like to have more than one. Sometimes you might have the main sign and you might have a small sign that says, you know, customer entry, or they're going to have another vendor inside that needs a smaller sign. So the new ordinance will allow up to 3 signs, and one of the signs has to be at least 50% of the total area. So you end up with a principal sign, and then you can have 2 smaller signs. So we think that's positive, and it's based on some of the requests we're seeing from the applicants. Awning and canopy signs, currently you can only have them if they're in place of your wall sign. In this particular instance, you'll be able to potentially have up to 25% of the awning or canopy, but it has to be counted towards the wall sign area. So this gives you the flexibility to have a nice tasteful, like on the drip edge of a canopy, have a nice tasteful sign there, and then also have a wall sign. But the total of the 2 still has to equal the maximum area allowed for the wall signs. We've added some standards for projecting and hanging signs, as well as those awning and canopy signs. Electronic message signs is another one that we've tried to incorporate some updates. One, the changeable message portion of your sign can be up to 25% of the total area. One of the things we have changed, though, your current ordinance says the message can only change once every 60 seconds. We're finding that more communities are going to the 1 per 30 seconds to allow for a little bit more frequent change of message. So we're suggesting 1 for 30 seconds. And then we've added some standards for illumination of electronic message signs. Once again, trying to make sure that those aren't too bright and don't cause a public safety issue. And then we've removed the content-based regulations that were associated with that. Another provision is outdoor advertising signs, which we commonly refer to as billboards. Your current ordinance allows them only in the M2 district when abutting an interstate highway. This ordinance will allow for a little bit more flexibility, still focused on I-94, but permitted in some of your commercial districts as well as your industrial districts, and then potentially on township-owned property. And then there's some separation. So for example, if there's one of these signs that's on the same side of the road, it has to be 5,000 feet away from another sign that's also an outdoor advertising sign. So the intent here is not to overwhelm the roadway with these types of signs, but rather to provide some flexibility. And the one thing that I think is really cool about what you've had happen within your community, and particularly if you look at the one that's currently near where Dick's is, there south of 23 Mile Road, it's pretty attractive for an outdoor advertising sign with a cultured stone around it and on the column. So that's being adopted as a standard. So if someone wants to put in an outdoor advertising sign, it's going to have to look nice. It's going to have to look like the character that's already been established within the community, and it's not going to look like they do when you go other parts up and down I-94. They're going to have a high quality appearance to them. So that's kind of the standard, and this is pretty much an illustration that shows what that means in terms of how these signs will look if they're erected based upon the standards that you've already set in your community reviewing some previous signs. And then window signs, maintaining the 15% total area in non-residential districts, but also allowing for a bonus if you want to do an etched or applied sign along the lower portion of the window, which sometimes can be tastefully done, kind of like these, or if someone wants to add some tasteful signage at the very bottom of the window, you can do that as long as it's at the very bottom, and it actually counts as a little bonus for your window signs, just to kind give people encouragement to do some high-quality signs at the bottom of the window. And then in terms of definition, we've added and updated some of the definitions, particularly surrounding some of the light-related and illumination-related regulations that are now included. Temporary signs, that's one that is substantially updated due to the Reed versus Town of Gilbert Supreme Court ruling. We're trying to treat temporary signs the same regardless of what they are trying to accomplish in terms of size and in terms of placement. So you know how you're used to seeing contractor signs and open house signs and special event signs and real estate signs. All of those words are coming out of your ordinance, and we're treating temporary signs as kind of a holistic category in order to be consistent with these rulings. And so what you end up with is this table, which it's too small to read, but this is, at least it makes it easy. You can see in the residential or non-residential what type of sign you get, and it's tied to how much frontage you have, and it also provides you with the opportunity to provide wall signs. You can do wall signs, particularly in non-residential districts. You can do that as well as in residential districts, but they're more limited in size in residential districts. And then I guess the one thing I would point out is, in order to maintain the ability for everyone to express some type of ideological, non-commercial, or political message anytime they want, regardless of the time of year, you will always be able to have a 3 square foot temporary sign in front of your residence or place of business to make that type of expression. We think that's generally consistent with some of the case law we've seen coming down. You need to provide people the ability to exercise their First Amendment rights, and that's now incorporated into this ordinance to allow for that to occur. And as Jonathan just briefly mentioned, the permitting process, it should be faster to go through the sign permit process now, because most of those are going to pretty much be addressed at the administrative level with the planning and zoning administrator or designee, and then only the appeals, the variance requests, would go to the planning commission. So that's going to, I think, free up the planning commission docket a little bit more, and they'll be seeing those appeals, and then they'll also see the outdoor advertising signs. So that's my brief summary. I'll turn it back.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Mr. Herrero and Director Palin and Attorney Seaver, Trustee Joseph. I think we go back to the beginning of 2017 when the first conversation about updating our sign ordinance. It's a massive undertaking. I know we're only in our contracts and actually go forward with this, but this went back multiple years prior to that. So I want to thank everyone for getting us this far. The amount of work that went into this could never be measured. Trustee Joseph.
Just a couple of quick questions. I know just from the planning commission, when we have a permanent sign request, there's a great deal of scrutiny and review. There are also a number of signs that really don't require a permit. So temporary signs, political signs. The political sign language hasn't changed for the most part. It's still 45 days before the election. It stays as it is now.
It's actually 60 days now.
I just looked over here as we were talking. So you're saying that our current ordinance affords 60 days?
No, your current affords 45, and under this ordinance it will be expanded to 60 days.
I don't know what I'm looking at then, because on page 77, political signs should be erected no earlier than 45 days prior to the election.
You're looking at the existing ordinance, not the proposed.
Who enforces that?
That would be code enforcement.
And how do they enforce? If they're in the township and they see political signs up before 45 days before an election, do they contact the candidate, or is there a complaint made? I say that only because you have 3 members of this board that have signs, many of them in the township right now, outside the 45-day window. So
Typically, the process would be that a letter would be sent to the property owner.
say again.
A letter would be sent to the property owner from code enforcement, informing them of the violation and the steps
Who makes that decision to send the letter? Would that be the code enforcement officer or?
It's a number of variables. It could be code enforcement, sees a violation. It could be, another township employee out on the road sees it. It could be a neighbor complaint. Enforcement issues come from all different avenues.
Mr. Ackerman, could you direct the code enforcement to handle that? Because we have a number of them in the township.
Tons of calls on this every year, 2018, 16, a number of issues. A lot come to the police department, a lot come to code enforcement, conversations with the attorney. How do you actually enforce this with what we have? I think the argument could be, Attorney Seaver wants to chime in, as if it's actually enforceable and how it's enforceable. So this sign ordinance is a big piece of cleaning that up, but trying to enforce was a practical impossibility. And Director Kirsten's got many calls, conversations with our attorney on it. How do you pick and how do you choose?
Well, I can answer that. I think we pick where we have integrity at our core, policies and procedures are clearly defined, and exceptions are rare and defensible. We should adopt that. I think you're familiar with it. We have 3 members of this board sitting in on a policy to enforce an ordinance that they have complete disregard for. What's the policy for that?
You were directing the question.
To the presenter.
The person might be, I don't know, the attorney wants to chime in on enforcing sign ordinances and what that looks like.
Mr. Supervisor, Michelle, can you turn up the volume for these speakers? Because I hear David, I can barely hear Jonathan, and Jonathan's right here.
It's working on it right now.
Okay, please.
Does it help to turn mine off?
You're fine, Dave.
Okay.
Danny had a hard time, even with Jonathan, the only thing I hear is this
Close to your
crazy.
mind. Close to your mind.
The enforcement, Dave, of the sign ordinance is no different than any other township ordinance we have. Our procedures are always the same. That if there's a violation that is either called into code enforcement, or if code enforcement observes a violation, they'll give a written notice to the property owner of a violation, and they'll give them a certain opportunity to comply. And if they don't comply, then we usually give them a violation notice letter. And if it ratchets up to the point where they want to issue an appearance ticket and prosecute it, they'll send a notice of violation to our office. We'll confirm with code enforcement that it's a enforceable violation in the district court. This is what we issues with appearance ticket. As a practical matter, I'm not looking at a fact specific on this board, but as a practical matter, the enforcement of the political signs, every community, whether it's Clinton or Sterling, I go up and down M59, and there are probably violations of every municipality's ordinance as you drive up and down 59. If the municipality has the personnel power to go out and ticket every one of them and take them to district court, as a practical matter, by the time the case is heard by the district court judge, the election is over. I mean, that's the reality of it. If it's treated like any other one, you give them all notices of violation.
I asked that only because it seems silly to even have it in our ordinance. What's the benefit of having an ordinance section that deals with political signs when the practical application is we know we have no enforcement capability of that?
That's the section that you're referring to is the only section in the sign ordinance that even remotely deals with elections.
Right.
And it really doesn't even deal with political signs. I didn't bring the ordinance up, but it simply indicates that 65 days before an election, that you have an opportunity to put up temporary signs. Under your ordinance, if I'm a resident of Chesterfield, I can put up a sign on my residential property with no permit for unlimited duration, and I can put on that sign whatever I want to put on it. I can vote for Abe Lincoln, and I can leave it on my front lawn all year long, as long as I live in the house. So it's, as Mr. Arroyo indicated, when I reviewed that ordinance, and I did not participate in the drafting of it, Rod and Jonathan did the heavy lifting. I reviewed it for enforceability. And what I was looking for is to make sure that they lifted out all of the content restrictions. And they did that. They bled the existing ordinance of any provisions dealing with content. So as a resident, I can have a sign on my property, and I can have political speech on that sign all year long. And the township can't do a thing about it. And that's true of any community that is following the dictates of the Supreme Court. So that's the only provision that you're referring to, that 65 days. You can get rid of that provision, and I can still put a political sign on my property all year long. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board?
Mr. Supervisor, I just want to clarify one thing. I think there might be some confusion because when we prepared the agenda item, we did include the original sign ordinance in there. So it might be hard to distinguish in the packet, but in the new sign ordinance, any reference to any political signs should be removed. It should just refer to temporary signs and then periods of time for display. Just wanted to provide clarification on that.
Any further comments from the board? Questions from Trustee Osborne?
Yeah, just one. If we stay on the same time plan here, this is the first reading, we have second, and then when will the enforcement come into play?
Is it 30 days, Bob? I can't recall.
Yeah, it is, because there's criminal time.
Okay, it's 30 days after the notice of adoption would go into effect.
And then notice of adoption would be approximately
I
when?
think it's within 7 days after the second reading, yes. Or after posting, after this.
So the next meeting will have the second adoption?
Yeah, after the next meeting, I think it's 7 days it has to be posted. and
7
then it's-
days posted and then 30 days after that?
Yeah,
So, okay, well, in this particular case, it's past the election, date of the election, that would be in November sometime?
I don't think that, I'm not sure the exact timeline, but it'll probably be right around,
Depends on
yeah.
if changes have to be made, how long it might take for that, okay. And then if I could just get a clarification through Chair to the attorney. The current, you were saying that our current ordinance, while many of the things in there are enforced and can be enforced, the one about, is it any temporary sign, any message, you're saying that a person wants to state?
What I'm saying is that when Rod and Jonathan and the Planning Commission took a look at the new ordinance, we attempted to eliminate in the update any references to content. When the case went before the U.S. Supreme Court a handful of years ago, the Supreme Court had an easy time striking down the ordinance because that particular municipal ordinance permitted signs in a certain area based on the content of the speech. And the ordinance, they couldn't defend their position by saying, you can have a sign that's political in this area, but you can't have it in this area. It's First Amendment protected. And whenever you have any infringement on First Amendment rights, the Supreme Court has said, you must advance a compelling governmental interest, and you must do it under the most least restrictive means possible. And the ordinance couldn't stand up to that. So when they had originally drafted this ordinance, and I had consulted with them, the goal was to pull out content. So we're talking about size, and illumination, and location. Forget what the sign says. And once you pull that out, the challenges you're going to get to your ordinance is going to be a First Amendment challenge 99% of the time. And by eliminating content, you're going to be able to sustain a challenge to it.
All right, so it's really, we're talking about some of the things we can restrict, like size and
Yes,
the types
there
of
are-
materials.
Yeah, the Supreme Court has said that you can impose what are called time, place, and manner restrictions. And what that means is government has an interest in regulating. You can regulate certain types of speech. So, for instance, I can stand up in front of the Macomb County Circuit Courthouse on the public sidewalk and advocate a political position between the hours whenever the court opens at midnight. I can do that. But I could not take my vehicle with a megaphone on it at 4 a.m. in a residential subdivision and articulate the same message. And the court would say, you're not regulating content. In the second instance, you're relating reasonable time, place, and manner. You can speak reasonable times. And that's what we did in this, is there's location of sign, size of sign, and they've made it so that any resident, or non-resident for that matter, that has a message in Chesterfield, they have an opportunity to put a sign on their property, so long as it's consistent with the ordinance, and put whatever message on it that they want.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Any further comments from the board? Discussion from the public, this will be back in front of us next meeting for second reading. Motion by Clerk Barry, support by Trustee. Public comment. Red means you're hot. Red means you're hot.
Good evening, residents and Township Board. My name is John Speaka. I have an issue that needs the board's immediate attention. I'm going to need some clarity and guidance. I've been listening to the conversation as far as for the signs and ordinance. Now, I had my own personal attorney look up the ordinance for the Chesterfield Township, what we have on the books, and it clearly states that political signs shall be erected no earlier than 45 days prior to the election and shall be removed within 10 days of the election or after the primary. I didn't invent math, but I know how to use it. I mean, we're 57 days out till November 3rd. So I guess my question, just listening to the conversation and bringing in our counsel, and I take it that there was a change to the sign ordinance to 60 days. Now, my question is, exactly when was that change made? And how long before that change goes in effect? Because based on what I heard from council, it doesn't sound like that change is in effect yet for 60 days. Am I correct on that? Or are we still within the 45 days that those signs can be erected? That's my question that I would like to address tonight, because as a candidate running for treasurer in this township, I need to know. I lead by example, and if we can't have those signs up yet, they're not going up. But if we can have our signs up, which Supervisor Acovetti, I see your sign up, Clerk Barry, I see your sign up, I see Bossberg's sign up, and I see your rubber stamp candidate has her sign up. So I mean, if you guys are gonna put your signs up, myself and the rest of the candidates are gonna put their signs up. So we either all play by the same rules, let's all get on the same page. So is that new ordinance for 60 days in effect tonight? Or is there a time period before that ordinance goes in effect? Because if that's the case, and I'm correct based on what I heard council say, then you guys are in violation of your own ordinance. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you. I'd like that addressed tonight. And if you are in violation, then I want the signs taken down.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Or from the public? Any further public comment? Treasurer LaFave.
Well, if that's the case and our current ordinance is 45 days, the new ordinance hasn't been published and it's not in effect. So currently, the 45 days for political signs is in effect, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
If we're township board is ethical and we follow our ethics policy, we enforce the ordinance as written. We enforce policy as written. So my assumption would be that the signs should come down until they're legal within the 45-day period.
I agree.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? Clerk Barry.
Being in the elections business, we get calls on this every year. I was glad to see that we were able to amend the ordinance. It was several years ago, or that we're looking to amend the ordinance. It was several years ago that I had a conversation with Attorney Siebert and said, what do we do? Being most people will call our office as well as the police department as well as code enforcement. And I was told at the time that there was just been a Supreme Court decision that came down that in essence, and if I'm wrong, I would ask for counsel to correct, but he said your ordinance isn't enforceable. The Supreme Court has struck down these ordinances as being unconstitutional, therefore you can't enforce it. And so that is what we were advising people when they would call our office, is the current ordinance was just deemed unconstitutional and therefore unenforceable. That was my understanding.
Any further comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
There are content-related issues There are not issues involving the number of signs and where the signs can be located. Otherwise, the bulk of planning commission work would just be thrown out the window, because every planning commission, we have a number of signs that need to be reviewed. So basic, the size of the sign and where you can put the sign and how many signs. Those are not unenforceable, therefore we don't do them. We have an ordinance, and from a political sign, I honestly, I don't have a problem with the signs being out before, or, because if we're all being honest, the rule on signs has always been, it's been fairly hands-off unless it's a safety issue. If you put a sign in the right-of-way or blocks, that sign should be removed because it's a safety concern. I think the issue involving when is it, if the rules are only for the peasants, how will they know when the king has changed the rules? It's a valid point that Mr. Speaker raises. If you're following the rules with integrity, then you see clearly it's 45 days. If the people in the know say, we don't really care about that, nobody enforces that anyway. When you're the person responsible for enforcing it, you at least have an obligation to say, listen, open season, put your signs wherever, keep them safe. That is our reality. We know by the end of election season, people are so sick of seeing the signs, it kind of litters the township, and everybody's complaining about signs. So I know that the earlier they go out, and you'll see the signs that are up now, people will put signs next to those signs because I think, that's a friend of mine. You're going to have signs everywhere, and enforcement really, if we're being honest, becomes quite difficult. But if you're the maker of the rule, at least give a signal that we're not following that rule, I think is a valid point. So if you didn't get the answer to the question, I hope you leave the meeting knowing, put it wherever you want, as big as you want, wherever you want, just don't create a safety hazard, because that will be an area where if a resident calls and says, I almost got in an accident dropping my kid off because I couldn't see around this sign, and I'll make a complaint personally. But as far as when they go up, it doesn't really matter. I wish those in the positions of power would simply say, I'm going to change the rules this go around because I want to put my sign up. Be fair, be integrity driven, be ethical, but it's really not a big deal.
Any further comments, Trustee Domingue?
I think it was pretty good at primary, everybody got their signs down quick. But I noticed there's one sign, it's nobody on this board, it's somebody running for a county position. They never took their signs down.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say the name, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, Dave. They're in Sterling, they're on Hall Road, they are all over, they never took them down. So, at least I can say for everybody around here that I know, the 7 of us, we had ours down. Yeah, there's one person running for a county position, never took their sign down. They are all over, and I'm talking, driving around where I go, I've seen them all over. So it seems like some of these other communities aren't doing what, they're supposed to be down how long after, but yeah, this one individual, they're all over the county, never came down. Just a point of view. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Osberg to approve item 7B is simple. Clerk Berry, please call for roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Osberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFava.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye. Item 7C. Clerk Berry, refresh your button.
Item 7C is to consider an amendment to the Charter Township of Chesterfield Code of Ordinances zoning to repeal Chapter 76 and to adopt a new zoning ordinance and zoning map and adopt ordinance number 184.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee
Support.
Joseph, support by... Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Osberg. IT support over there by the box, I just pressed the mute all to stop that noise. Director Balin and Mr. Guerrero.
Thank you. Again, this item was approved back in August of 19, not the item, the project. Rod's team has been working on this to get this done, converted to an easier to use and easier to read format that the community development team is really looking forward to using. This did go for the public hearing in front of the Planning Commission. Now it's in front of the board tonight for adoption, and with that, I'll turn it over to Rod again.
Thank you. Just another brief presentation. We're very excited about the clear zoning formatting of your zoning ordinance with the goal of making your ordinance much more user-friendly. One of the things we do with the clear zoning formatting is we add additional graphics. We make it digitally hyperlinked so that you can get answers quicker, and we update it to what we consider to be a common sense format. So all the definitions are now in one section. They're listed in a couple pages, and you can hyperlink to them. The site standards, such as landscaping and parking, that's all in one section now. All your land use standards are in one section. A use matrix has been added, which often the most common question is, where can I do this use? Okay, office, childcare. Instead of having to go through all the different districts, now you have a matrix and you can look it up. And then the zoning map legend is hyperlinked, and you're going to have, when this is all adopted and on your website, you're going to have an interactive zoning map as well, which we're very excited. The end software for this is something almost everybody has on their computer, which is Adobe Acrobat. If you don't have it, you can get it for free. Once it's adopted, you go to the Township website, and you'll be able to find the new zoning ordinance. Nice thing about this is it's word searchable and phrase searchable, so if you're looking to find out what the regulations are for fences, you just type in fences, and everywhere in the ordinance where fences occurs is going to come up. These are some of the symbols to help describe what they are and what they mean within the ordinance. This is the common sense format. There's only 7 basic articles: purpose and intent, definitions, zoning districts, use standards, site standards, development procedures, and administration enforcement. Makes a lot more sense than having 30 different articles that are all over the place. This is the typical 2-page spread of a district. So you can see on the left side, the permitted uses, on the right side, all the development regulations, and this tells you what it all means when you get into the ordinance. This is the use matrix I talked about. So you have the listed uses down the column on the left side, and then it goes across and tells you which zoning districts that use or uses are permitted. And then this is your zoning map, which has now been refreshed and incorporate all the previous rezonings that you've done. And as I mentioned, you're going to be able to actually go onto your website once this is adopted and in place. Click on a parcel. It's going to tell you the size of that parcel. It's going to tell you the zoning. And then when you click on that, it's going to take you right to this ordinance and open the 2-page spread for the zoning district that applies to that parcel. Makes it really easy to get information for a particular site. So if you're a citizen and you're curious about what's going on with my own property, how is it zoned, what are my setbacks, you'll be able to get that instantly. If you're a business owner and you're trying to find out, what can I expand, what if I want to add to the side or the rear, how much room do I have, you're going to be able to find out what the regulations are with that interactive zoning map. As I mentioned, the definitions are all listed, and wherever you see blue text, that means it's hyperlinked. So you just click on the definition itself, and it'll take you right to the definition. This is the 2-page spread with all the regulations for each individual district. Special land uses, if they're in blue, that means there's standards that are associated with them. And these are some of the additional references that are important to know. One of the things that's really great about this ordinance is that it tries to help you understand. So if I'm looking at the building height diagram in the lower right corner, not every roof type is a pitched roof like this. So there's a little gray bar above it that says, how do I measure building type height? Well, if you click on that, it'll take you right to the definitions for building height, and it shows you how you measure building height for each roof type. So you can get that information quickly and really understand how the ordinance works. As part of this process, we also conducted a zoning audit, looking at what's working and what needs some work in your zoning ordinance. That's been presented to the Planning and Zoning Department, and we're going to be going through that with the Planning Commission to talk about some things we can do to make some substantive or some policy changes that we think might be appropriate. So we're going to start working with the Planning Commission on that in the coming months. So that's a summary. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you again for this product specifically. This again, Trustee Joseph and I early along had a conversation on how do we make this more user-friendly? How do we make this easier, not only for the investors in our growing community to attract those big ticket and those high-profile users, but for every citizen when something's getting built next to it or when they want to do an addition. And this, I think, is going to be one of the biggest improvements that we see moving forward. Trustee Joseph, I'm planning, that's what we're going to put into this.
Is it okay to speak? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. The thing that I would like to point out, and Ron, I know you're not a bragging kind of guy. One of the very nice features about this, you pointed out, is if I'm a landowner, if I'm a resident, or I'm a business owner, and I want to say, see what could be done on my property, this allows me to see very clearly everything that could possibly go on that property, setbacks with definitions. It also works the other way too, in that if I want to put a pizza shop in somewhere, or I want to put in a small factory that does whatever, I can go through clear zoning and find the areas in the township that is a permitted use. It can go the other way as well, and I can see where my business idea would work. It is something that we talked about on the QBS team going back a few years when you initially came in and presented to the panel as a vendor. And one of the biggest selling points for me, and I think Trustee Domingue and I in particular had a long conversation, was clear zoning. And this is proprietary with Giffels because it's yours. I could tell from the layout of the QBS process, they couldn't duplicate it. They brought you on board. They brought you and clear zoning on board because it is revolutionary. It is a sophisticatedly simple, ingenious, user-friendly tool that puts big business and small business on the same page when it comes to plotting out, which is exactly the direction that we're trying to go. It's echoed in our master plan, and it is, despite the differences we have, there is some agreement on moving forward. This is it. This is how you do it. And it's been an exhausting process. There's still a lot of work to be done as you go through the ordinance audit, if you will, and we're looking at what works and what doesn't work. We also measure that by how many requests for variance do we have at ZBA. And if you're loaded up with variance requests, then maybe your rule's a little bit off if people are constantly asking for exceptions. So it's a long process, and just in terms of talking about sound, one publication, the next, debate. It's a very, very comprehensive process. I'm proud of a lot of things that I've done in this township. By far, one of the most proud is being involved with planning and bringing in to this township who had a planner for decades. No disrespect to that work, but this is light years ahead of where we were just a few years ago. Being part of the QBS team that brought this in and serving on planning with you has been very, very it's a very proud thing for me and our team on planning. So thanks for all your work on this. And it is exactly what you said you would deliver during your vendor pitch so many months ago. Thank you.
Trustee Vosper.
Thank you. One of the things I heard was simple, and I also saw that various things on it. Will there be some kind of a training thing or some type of just a short video giving users hints on how to use it?
Yes, we plan on doing a short demonstration video that could actually be on the township's website, yes.
Trustee Domingue.
Also, we interviewed for planning, the
members of the board that sat in on that along with Jonathan and DPW over at DPW a while back. Rod, it was a great presentation. I commend you. Same thing as David said. You know, we thought, wow, this is pretty neat. This is really cool. And then when you see what it does, simplified, makes you don't have to be a computer wizard or can be, you know, just a normal average person. So great project. I'm glad we brought you on board when we interviewed you, and thanks for bringing us forward.
Any further comments before Clerk Reader?
Thank you, and just so the board is aware as well, currently, you know, obviously we maintain the code of ordinances, so currently when you go to the zoning section of the ordinance, right now it's all the pages and pages and hundreds of pages we have here that were part of your packet. Now what you will find is if this is implemented, you will see under, when you go to zoning ordinance, what you'll find is a link there that will take you directly to the clear zoning, because that is in fact the new ordinance. So it will not be there, there will not be any additional details like there are now. To see the actual text, you will have to go into the clear zoning product, and we will provide a link in our ordinance that will go directly to that. So it should be very easy, even if someone is looking through or scrolling through or searching through the code of ordinances, it will be easy for them to find that link.
Any further comments on item 7C? Comments from the public. Unlike the ordinance amendment of 7B that we took up prior to this one, this is for passage tonight. It does not require the two readings like the one before it, so it is for passing. This will not be back in front of us, correct? Any further comments from the board on item 7C? Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Vosper to approve item 7C as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosper. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Motion passes. Item 7D.
Item 7D is a recommendation to place the 2020 detention pond special assessments on the 2020 winter tax roll.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Demink.
Second.
Support by Clerk Barry. Discussion. Comments from the public. And Deputy Treasurer Clark is here.
This is a standard approval for every year. These have all been approved by resolution for special assessment districts, and the costs are included in your packet.
Any comments from the board or questions from the public? Motion by Trustee Demink, support by Clerk Barry to approve item 7D as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosper. Aye. Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 7E.
Item 7E is a recommendation to place the 2020 street lighting special assessments on the 2020 winter tax roll.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Demink,
Second.
support by Treasurer LaFata. Discussion. Very similar to the last one.
Yes, very similar. We base it on our invoices from the Detroit Edison. We get a separate invoice for all our street lightings. So this is based on the cost for the whole entire year.
Any questions from the board or comments from the public?
Just one comment, Mr. Supervisor, if I may. Just so everybody knows, these come up and you get a call, I get a call, one more call about a special assessment district and they passed a new tax. It's not a new tax. This only impacts communities that have passed a special assessment district for whatever enhancements to their life that they as a community decided. So there are special assessment districts in this agenda item, just pulling one for example. In the Heatherwood subdivision, that community decided that they wanted street lighting, and it amounts to $8.30 per household affected, and the passage of this agenda item only pertains to the special assessment districts that have already been voted on and approved by individual communities. So we are not adding new taxes to the rolls. These are agreements that have been reached by way of the special assessment district,
Yes,
correct?
yes. They're treated just like any other special assessment. They have been approved by the board previous. Each of the subdivisions, depending on how many lights are in the subdivision, the costs are based on those.
We are just in the passage of this agenda item, we are just agreeing to put it on their tax bill for those impacted communities,
Yes.
correct? Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board or comments from the public? Motion by trustee Domingue this time, support by Treasurer LaFatta to approve item 7E as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFatta.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosper.
Aye.
Supervisor Acovetti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 7F.
Item 7F is to approve a recommendation by Public Works to purchase a 2000 multi-quip VR36HA smooth drum roller at a cost of $7,500 and sell a 1989 Caterpillar CS433B vibratory smooth drum roller for $12,500 to Roseal's Farm and Garden Supply, Inc. The purchase of the peanut roller will come out of GL number 591000140, and the revenue of the 1989 Caterpillar CS433B vibratory smooth drum roller will go into GL number 591000673.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by trustee Vosper.
Second.
Support by Clerk Barry. And Assistant Director Johnson is here.
Good evening, Board. So just a real quick, just a brief recap on this. The multi-quip roller is going to be basically meant for any asphalt projects we have in case, not just a project, but if we ever have any kind of water or sewer maintenance issue that's under a road or anything that has to do with asphalt, we will use this, then this will become very handy in that regard. In the years past, we have borrowed from New Baltimore or rented from Chester Rental. And it's, we felt it was time to finally pull the trigger and buy our own. We came across this one from Roseal's. These are very hard to find used, especially in this good of condition and as few hours as it had. So we're looking at new, came across this one, which is in very good shape. So we're looking to purchase this so we can easily repair a lot of the road work that we have, or any road work that needs to be done from water sewer maintenance. The selling of our Caterpillar that we currently own, it's mostly meant for rolling. We used to use it for, we used it for the building department project when this was getting built. We used it for that parking lot, and we've used it also to roll the soccer fields in Pollard. But lately it's becoming less seldom used, so we felt it was our best advantage to sell it, use the money to purchase this smooth drum roller from Roseal's and take the remaining funds and purchase a trailer for it that'll be less than the $5,000 we'll be making off of these two transactions. Any questions?
Questions for Assistant Director Johnson? Trustee Joseph?
I don't know, I'm not in the peanut roller business, I don't know what the market rate is. But in terms of the cost of the original purchase, what did we pay for the original when we bought the one that we're selling? That's the peanut roller.
The peanut roller is what we're actually buying. The one other roller we purchased, I think it was roughly around $60,000. I don't recall, I think it was around $60,000 we bought it for, and we're selling it for $12,500. It is an older machine. We bought it used as well. Those are upwards even more expensive if you buy it new. But the one that's $7,500, you can buy it for $35,000 to $40,000 brand new. This only has 100 or so hours on it, so not in bad shape. We actually, our fleet manager, Jeremy Jakes, went out there, Public Director Paddington, they took a look at it, drove it around, made sure it was in good condition, and that's why we're bringing it here today.
I'm okay, I guess, with the purchase. What we're getting rid of when a lease car is, no longer fit for service, it goes to auction. Not to bring up old,
problems, but we've had challenges in this township with selling equipment that was presented one way, and the antidote for that was just, we go to auction with our vehicles, or we repurpose them within, a fleet somewhere else. Is that not, are we not able to do that with this particular piece of equipment? I guess I like the transaction of, look, we need this piece of equipment, and this is the cost to buy it. It's the back end of a piece that we spent $60K on that we're selling, and then we're gonna get it. It just seems like we don't have, the market isn't dictating what the worth of the way an auction does. And that, the fairness and the transparency piece is what I'm interested in. Again, I don't know anything about peanut rollers or any of that, but when we're selling a $60,000 piece of equipment, how do we know it's worth, if we don't, have a mechanism to see what the market brings for it the way we do with an auction?
Yeah, we could go either way with it. We felt that we had, we dealt with vendors who were very reputable and would give fair prices. So, and we obviously got 3 just like we would with the inverse of getting instead of buying the inverse. So we felt that was a fair estimate of the machine, but if the board deems it's not fair, they want to go with an auction, we can actually do that as well. But we feel this is a fair number and a fair price for selling.
So AIS offers us, we could sell it for $14,500 to them, but we're selling it to $12,500 to Roseals.
Yes, but you can't buy from one and sell to another. It's either all or none. So if you buy from them, then we have to pay $34,000 for that. So the net is we're spending more by buying from them.
Any further questions from the board? Clerk Berry.
In the event that the board would like to consider the option of sending it to auction, when would the next opportunity be for that? Do you know?
I would have to ask our fleet manager, but I'm sure it could be in the next, next time we take some vehicles in, we take it along with them. So next few months or so.
Thank you.
Trustee Domingue.
I don't think you're gonna be able to do it with the vehicles. I believe you're gonna have to go like to the county auction. I don't know, they still have them every May? I don't know if they even have it this year.
I don't believe so.
But I mean, that's where, Kathy says no, but I mean, that's where you're gonna have to go with your heavy equipment. At least from what I know, David, in my past, so I mean, they got 3 bids.
No, sorry, Mr. Schuler. Again,
I know where you're going.
the Roseals is a $7,500 purchase. If we wanted to go buy the roller purchase from Roseals, if I understood you right, it's not $7,500, it's $7,500 contingent on a $12,500 trade of the other roller.
So we can purchase the roller 7,500. We just can't buy from one and sell to another. So like AIS is not going to take $14,500 for a roller and not purchase. So we can buy from them and not sell.
So it's just like a trade-in on a car. Like I can get the monthly price I want, provided that the trade-in goes with. I start pulling pieces of the deal out, the deal changes. Can we purchase the roller from Roseals for $7,500?
Yes, we can purchase from anybody.
And then the belief is that we're not going to recoup 12.5 or anywhere close going the auction route.
But I don't know, I mean, supervisor would know more on heavy equipment than I would. I'm just, because the other place you're gonna do is you're gonna have to go to a county
Well,
auction.
Roseals has been with us for, like 100 years, and I mean, it's well documented. I'm just looking for the policy, the consistency of the policy in terms of how we deal with equipment. That's the precedent setting piece for me. But I'm just for the record, I mean, Roseals, so we're not really worried about that. It's what are we following in terms of policy, that's the question.
You could approve just purchasing a new peanut roller, which is just another term for a very small roller for more of the work we do. I don't even think you need approval for us to go to auction, but that is our policy. So he's coming for approval for us to sell this and not go to auction to package these 2 together. Now, would the cost of loading this and preparing it for auction bring more than $12,500? It sounds like Jeremy and the team think that is the best value for us for this specific piece. So if the board chooses to purchase the roller for $7,500, hold on to the large vibratory compactor that we have and explore options for going to auction, which is our process, then we would just approve purchasing the roller and not selling the other piece.
Correct, correct.
I'm comfortable either route. I do think the cleanest route is the route that the DPW has presented in front of us. Treasurer Levada.
Do we have any idea what the depreciated value is on the township books?
It's all, great question. Yeah, it's 31 years
It's
old.
100% depreciated?
Yeah, I think, I believe its useful life is like 15 to 20 years. It's about 31 years old.
Any further comments from the board?
I would just like to continue, there's no sense separating it in this instance. Again, the difficulty was in the process. I was more than happy to see you keep both pieces, purchase what you need, and if there's another piece that can be used somewhere else, if it has no real value to the point that it's off the books, why not keep it? But then you also have the maintenance costs, as I heard you talk. I'm just looking for direction. When you come to the podium, I could hear in your presentation, you have some fiscal responsibility there. So you have a 12.5 purchase, you have a 7.5 piece of equipment, and then a $5,000 trailer. So we've right-sized the equipment for the department, and we got rid of old inventory. That's good thinking, and I appreciate that. It just potentially has problems because of the format, the policy that's created. I get it. I think you laid it out. I understand the supervisor, so I'm content with the motion as it is.
Any further comments from the board or from the public? Motion by Trustee Vosper, supported by Clerk Berry to approve item 7F as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Vosper. Aye. Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFava.
Aye.
Supervisor Eckevetti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 7G.
Item 7G is to approve a recommendation by Public Works to purchase a Ford F-750 dump truck from LaFontaine Ford at a total cost of $128,944.24 from GL number 591000148.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Trustee Vosper, supported by Trustee Domingue. And Assistant Director Johnson.
Okay, so for this agenda item, obviously, as I mentioned in the agenda, we have two dump trucks currently that are F-750s. One is a 2000, one is a 2002. So they're obviously very well-used vehicles. And we've been going out since last September to get quotes. We worked with Jeremy Jakes again. He's been getting quotes. He attempted to contact Russ Milne Ford first to get quotes, since they were the most local Ford dealer, asking them to the my ideal price. We were unable to get any response from them in terms of getting a price. We then switched to Jorgensen Ford to get the quote the same. They gave us 3 separate quotes. We were unable to ask or make the changes necessary for what we asked for. Then finally, STE, who outfits these vehicles, so Ford gives you the chassis, and then STE gives you the back end and holds the dirt. They've put the plow blade, all those kind of things on it. So STE referenced us to go to LaFontaine. LaFontaine, we've spent over 6 months working with them back and forth through COVID, this and that, to get these numbers. So it's been very trying, and I appreciate between Jeremy and Director Coddington, they both worked very hard at getting these prices, because it was not easy to get this information during this time. So we got all that taken care of, and also we did try doing the My Deal. The chassis was too small, so we had to upfit the chassis, make it a little bit bigger gross vehicle weight, so it can handle what we're using it for, as well as the underbody blade that we need to install on it. So while we attempted to not do a price, we got as close as we could, given the size of the vehicle we needed. So with that, we're looking to purchase this dump truck that will match the exact size that we have currently. And just update to a new one.
Comments from the board? Trustee Vosper.
I appreciate all the work you went to, I support this, but I heard you trying to find, where can we find these things? Is there anything that MDOT, like with police cars, with the state police, is there anything with MDOT or county association or anything that has these types of vehicles?
Yeah, a lot of their vehicles are larger, more semi-truck based vehicles, so they're a lot larger, a lot more challenging to get down private roads. We have to plow private road in the winter, or, because we have ordinance, anything more than 4 inches, we go in emergency to help out to make sure vehicles hit the road. There's no way those trucks can get down the roads, or some roads we help, we have gravel programs or maintenance we do, like Hickok or Killawall. There's no way we could angle the blade and get down there, it's too wide or too big of a truck, so we'd never be able to, wouldn't be useful.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any further comments from the board? Clerk Perry.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that we are finding that that is an ongoing challenge, trying to get multiple quotes from anyone over the course of this last 6 months across the board. So I understand how difficult it had to be, and I am very grateful that you finally have the number to give us. One question I do have, it seems like, and I'm not opposed to the item either, I think that it's actually pretty reasonable considering the product that we're getting for it. I know oftentimes that when Director Kirsten brings items from public safety, they do a very thorough job of seeing if there's something used that can be purchased or something in that order. In this case, and as a result, I think it's provided a lot of value. We've gotten a lot of, I think, high quality vehicles and different apparatus at a great deal because of that. Is this an item that would be even an option for a used piece for a used truck? Or if it is, have we looked at that? And if it's not, if you could just kind of let us know why that's not an option and why this is really probably the only way to go.
Yeah, Director Pennington did find a few that were used, or I guess newer or used, but the challenge is the specifications are not what we need in terms of the size of the dump, because we're looking for typically an 8-yard, they could be 6'4", so it's, you're looking for the size we need. We want to buy too small of a truck and then hauling back and forth, which is less efficient. So it's very tough to find the exact what you're looking for. We did find one, but it was already sold. So we were trying our best to get it either used or newer, and unable to find something that fit our needs.
Thank you.
Yep. Any further comments or questions from the board or comments from the public? Oh, I think you have one behind you. Oh, public comment behind you.
John, speak up. Just a quick question regarding, thank you for your hard work too, by the way, on this. Did anybody look in possibly on the RAM side? I looked at the total price and I don't know exactly what that consists of, that $128,944. Seems a little excessive. So I was just wondering if anybody has looked at a RAM before we make a final decision on this. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? If you want to take a shot there, Marino.
Yeah, we looked at other vendors and such as well. We did look at, if it was GM or Dodge or whatever, well, not whatever, but other vehicles, we were unable to find something that fit the same size or capacity that we need. So it wasn't like we were strictly focused on Ford, we looked at other avenues, absolutely, but this was the best option that fit us.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? One more time on the board. Motion by Trustee Gosper, support by Trustee Demink to approve item 7G as submitted. Clerk Perry, please call the roll.
Trustee Gosper. Aye. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFatta.
Aye.
Supervisor Acovetti.
Aye.
Clerk Perry. Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 7H.
Item 7H is a request by the Clerk's Department to purchase a high-speed document scanner from Panasonic in the amount of $19,500, which includes a 3-year warranty from GL number 101215970.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Clerk Perry. Is there support? Support by Trustee Gosper. And Records Coordinator Greenham is here. Any questions?
Hi, thanks for hearing us tonight.
We are here to ask for the approval of the purchase of a high-speed document scanner. It's Panasonic. The reason why we're looking for a scanner of this nature is currently we scan all of our documents through what is now a copy machine that also prints documents that happens to have a scanner on the top of it. Records consist of not only 8.5 by 11 paper, size paper, tabloid size paper. We also have small, perhaps some of the last records that we scanned in were receipts from the Postal Service about this size. Those have to be taken one by one and flipped both sides and scanned in. The scanner that we're looking at tonight will take pretty much all sizes of paper and adjust the size as you put them in the feeder, except obviously blueprints, but we do have a scanner for that down in the building department. One of the things, as I said, which would make it nice is that machine that we're using right now is used by the clerk's department and the supervisor's department, and it's tied up a lot. It's busy, of course it is. There's a lot of people using it. So I don't necessarily get to scan at optimum times. The records that come in immediately, I will get time to do that, but as far as getting time to scan larger projects, sets of minutes, site plan reviews, that kind of thing, I don't always get the time to go in there and scan them. If I did have a scanner by my desk, I would be able to do so at any time. One reason that we are looking at purchasing this right now, we had talked about renewing the clerk's department this year was basically the year of elections. And Clerk Berry, of course, was very mindful of that during her budget preparation. And we talked about wanting one of these high-speed scanners. We were going to look at maybe buying it next year. She's going to try to get it in her budget for next year. Then with the CARES money, of course, scanning will allow people to look at records electronically. They won't be touching them. They can look at them from their own computer. And we were hoping that this would maybe be purchased with the CARES money. So I believe if it is approved, it will be submitted. And instead of the township having to pay for it next year out of their own budget, perhaps we can get it with this money.
Questions for Trustee Anderson?
Yeah, Mrs. Green, as one of the working folks here, what is your personal opinion? Is this a good purchase? Is it efficient? Would you support it?
I would support it. I think it's a very good purchase. George Mavis works in our office, and he did a very thorough job of investigating what types of scanners were out there. I'll be honest with you, and I'll tell you that I wasn't 100% sold on this. It's not a small expense. However, I said to him, I said, George, so what is the difference between this scanner at what is now $14,000 and some other scanners at $7,000 or $8,000? And he explained to me that this scanner has 5 paper size sensors and paper thickness sensors. So I'll give you an example. During the time that we were working from home, on Thursday, Carrie Norberg would come into the office, and one of the things she would do for me is she would scan pages and pages and pages of minutes. I would load them into Laserfish. I would come in and look for them, and because maybe you didn't catch all the pages, as I'm going through in Laserfish and taking sets of minutes, some of my minutes might just have page 1, 5, 7. That scanner never flipped it over, to both sides. This particular scanner, having the 5 sensors, if it took more than 1 page through, it would rerun the entire document for you. You wouldn't have to do that. So, for instance, now I may have 10 sets of minutes that I would need to send for the boxes in long-term storage or rescan, so I'm going to have a complete set in there. So I do believe it's far more efficient than what we have now.
Thank you, Linda. I was in here during the time the workers were staying at home or directed to stay at home. I kind of was worried that you didn't get the memo because every time I bounced in there, it seemed like you were in the office. Thank you.
Thanks.
Trustee Joseph?
Thank you. I like all the features, and clearly if you know what you need, you know what you need, and I have confidence in you. The reason cited in the executive summary for only one bid is that it's in essence sounds like a proprietary instrument, and that it, at least in the executive summary, is listed as the only only manufacturer currently working with the FADGI rating, which will be mandated in 12/31/22. But the there's nothing on the FADGI website that indicates that there's a mandated requirement in 2022. This is a big expense for a scanner.
It is.
And the idea that Panasonic is the only one that's in compliance with a federal rating that's over 2 years away seems like it would be, an unfair trade practice that they're the sole distributor for a mandate that will occur in 2 years. Seems to limit competition, and it kind of violates our. It doesn't follow our purchasing policy unless we declare it proprietary. And in this instance, it looks like we're programmed that in based on it being the only. Why can't we look at other manufacturers or other vendors? Why the Panasonic, which is double the price? I know the features, but surely there's got to be other scanners that offer features that aren't necessarily FADGI compliant in 2 years.
I'm going to be real upfront with you and tell you that that part of the summary was written by Mr. Mavis. He did do a lot of work with the gentleman, Marcus, from Panasonic. One thing I will say about Panasonic, every time George contacted him, within a half an hour, he would answer him back. He was very attentive. I can't give you an honest or upfront answer to why that will be the only one in 2 years. I do know that Kodak, there was a Kodak scanner that was pretty similar in price, and when we found those prices, and Mr. Mavis sent those to Marcus at Panasonic, he did reduce the cost of what this was going to be. So he did reduce it from $16,000 to $14,000.
Who is George?
He's our citizen service assistant in the clerk's office.
He's our who?
Citizen service assistant in the clerk's office.
What is that, Mr. Supervisor? I'm not familiar with the citizen services.
An employee of the clerk's office.
He works for the township.
That's correct.
He does, yes, sir, I'm sorry.
His job is to research these things. That's what he does.
That was part of his job, yes.
Okay. So Panasonic is the only one that's going to keep us in compliance. And from a trench worker, when you come to the podium, as Trustee Anderson pointed out, if you say you need it, I support it. The fact that you don't know this piece is the piece that I'm most concerned about, and that is our policies and procedures and the bid process. And to say that this is a proprietary purchase, and it's not available in the free market, is not exactly true. We're basing it on what we think will be mandated in 2 years, which seems to be a stretch. So I'd like to see the process followed, and I appreciate all the work that you do. And I want to get you the equipment that you need. I want to do it at the right price, and the way that we determine that is our policy, purchasing policy. Thank you.
May I comment on that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I am not positive of the dates, but I was under the impression that if we were to submit anything for the CARES money, that would have to be done in a certain amount of time. We would have to actually have the product invoiced, paid for, and the canceled check to send in. At least from my other community where I live, that's what they told us that we had to do. So I just would like to make sure that we can still, if we were to come back in 2 weeks with some more information for you, that would still meet the guidelines. That would be my only concern with that. I understand what you're saying, and I want to answer that for you. That's my only concern.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Any further comments from the board? Questions from the public? Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosper to approve item 7H as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosper.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Dominic.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFawn. Supervisor Angebetti.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very
Item
much.
7I.
Item 7I is to approve a recommendation from the Department of Public Safety to repair the catch basin and cement at Fire Station Number 3 in the amount of $40,544.90 from GL number 205336931.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk Berry,
Support.
supported by Trustee Joseph.
This is a catch basin in the back of the station, fire station number 3 on 23 Mile Road. It was originally designed when the structure was built. For the last couple of years, it's been collapsing. We've moved trucks down, we've eliminated the weight going over top of it while we work with facilities and our engineer in the township to figure out a solution, most cost-effective way to repair it. After much inspection and Mitch from engineering walking out and looking around, this was the best solution. Approximately 10 yards of concrete coming up, reconstruct the drain, dig it out, and replace and rebuild the entire drain along with new cement.
Questions for Director Kirsty? It was included on the capital improvement list.
Yes, it was.
Improvements.
Yes, this was identified some time ago as a problem.
Been on our radar for several years.
Correct.
Comments from the public on item 7I. Motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Trustee Joseph to approve item 7I as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Trustee Bosberg. Aye. Treasurer LaFava.
Aye.
Supervisor Acolyte.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 7J.
Item 7J is to approve a recommendation by the Department of Public Safety to purchase body-worn cameras from WatchGuard in the amount of $206,845.92 over 5 years from 205-301-970.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Domingue. Supported by Trustee Joseph, is that?
Yes, sir.
Director Kirsty.
So what we want to do is we want to migrate to the newest video technology for our officers on the street, which is the body-worn cameras. I'm sure you've seen them on the news. I'm sure you've seen them in demonstrations on news clip. We've had video systems within our cars for the last 25 years. Back when we used VHS tapes, we moved to a digital format. We then migrated to a wireless in-car system. This is the final step, a body-worn camera that each officer will wear while he's out on the road. Obviously, there are liability issues that we like to protect ourselves on, along with the officers. That's really the main goal, but it is, again, to provide the most accurate evidence that we can to our prosecutors, specifically our township and Macomb County prosecutors when the criminal cases come about.
Questions from the board? Trustee Joseph.
First, I just want to say nice work in presenting this executive summary. I noticed that a lot of the work, at least a lot of the correspondence goes to Captain Franks, so nice work on this. It's a very well laid out proposal that lines up very nicely. I'd also like to share, if I could, just one sentence that I found to be particularly interesting in the executive summary. Body-worn cameras, and I quote, have attributed to many positive outcomes for police departments, including less citizen complaints, less uses of force, increased in effective prosecutions, and an increase in the willingness for citizens to report crimes. In addition, the positive outcome studies have shown that citizens agree more with officers and tend to obey directives when officers are wearing a BWC or body-worn camera. The big holdup, one of the big holdups was not just the cost of the cameras, but the storage space. And I see that this purchase includes the ability to store on-site with this manufacturer, this vendor, or cloud-based storage space. So again, another area that has been thoroughly thought through. The last thing that I would just point out was the difficulties potentially that departments have encountered with a FOIA request. And I appreciate the conversation that you and I had prior to this meeting. In that if a citizen or anybody requests through the Freedom of Information Act, there are certain things in a traditional report, an accident report, that get redacted. In a body-worn camera, if a FOIA request was made, somebody has to go through the footage and, in essence, redact digitally information. So if you're in a home on a domestic violence call and the body camera picks up pictures of family members or different information that would be not part of the FOIA, somebody has to go through and redact those. What provisions do you have in place for the costs associated with that? And do you anticipate increased manpower, if you will, for satisfying FOIA requests?
So as far as FOIA goes, our current practices are going to stay in place. This is actually going to make it a little bit more easier on the management side of it, as far as who and how we disperse and disseminate that. The technology increases will afford us that. Yes, you still have to have an officer go through and scrub that and make sure that whatever FOIA or discovery for a criminal case is properly researched and provided in light of those requests. So as far as responsibility, nothing has really changed, and nothing will change from what we currently do for our in-car videos. When it elevates itself to the body-worn camera, as you said, there's a public act that the law was passed in 2017, and that basically protected what body-worn camera images, who can get them, who can FOIA them, and it's very limited. And in that case and in that nature, anything that we would do, we would have to get clearance from the prosecutor, whether it be the county prosecutor or our own township prosecutor. So the tight controls are still in place. You can't just come in and say, I want the body camera from the officers who are at my neighbor's house. That doesn't fly. The statute's very clear, very enumerated as to who can get it, when they can get it, how they can get it, and really that's something that we will just roll into our constant daily practice as we do already.
The other thing, if I could, Mr. Supervisor, is just a comment. I'm grateful for this purchase and this addition to the department. One thing that I've always been very proud of in the public safety arena, accountability is not a dirty word over there. People are very, very willing to be entirely accountable. This is a tool that helps facilitate that, and it allows the public to see what those of us that know this department know already. It's a great department, and we have officers that treat people with courtesy and respect even when they're not at their best. That's independent of any demographic that you want to point out. We have professionals in that department, and community policing has been a priority that has come from the top. That is to know the community, to be in the community, to be present in the community. It's seen in the expansion of our open house, our Friends of Chesterfield Police, and all of the great work to make our department truly a community police department. The body cameras add to that, and they show the public what those of us close to it already know. So I'm glad to see it's here, and I'm glad to see that it's been well researched and presented in an exceptional way. Again, great work, Captain Franks, and your entire administrative team. It's a big purchase and a big addition to our department, so thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Just a couple, I really appreciate those comments and the mantra of what we are, the police department. We are transparent, and that's what this component adds to us. Captain Franks, Captain McNair, when complaints come in, we allow people to come in and look at the video, our in-car video, and we will do the same with this. We are accountable, we are transparent, and this tool just enhances that even more. And I hope you approve this request.
Thank you.
Trustee Demink.
It's a costly expense, but it's just the way policing has gone to this day and age. Captain Frank's did a good job on this. Director Kirsten spoke with me earlier, told me that this was going to be eventually coming. We've had conversations over the years, especially between his experience and mine, and seeing the way things changes. So it's a costly expense, but we need to do it. And the guys, men and women of the PD, they do a great job. And like you said, when someone makes a complaint and it's falsified, this is how you prove it. What they say, and here it is on tape. So great job, Director Kirsten.
Trustee Anderson.
Yeah, one more support item here is watching what's going on in this country every night. You'll see the officers trying to do their job, and you've got a crowd running around with these, filming everything. And for the officers, I think even having people under control or whatever, there are already media stars and online, people are putting it on Facebook, everywhere else. This instrument, times have changed, you know, Trustee Lee and I were talking about it compared to our day, but I see this as a strong protection for our officers and our, you know, as far as liability, their safety and providing more concrete view of what's going on out there. Good move here.
Thank you. I just have a add one more comment. I had a very wise, well-known municipal attorney recently tell me, if you don't have these, you're nuts.
Not exactly what I said.
Any comments from the public? We have a couple coming in behind you.
Just a couple comments. I want to thank the police chief. I'm a full supporter of this, and I'm also a full supporter of making sure that we're transparent in this township. So I think this is a great investment for the township, and down the road, it's going to make a big difference in our liability. So we're making the right call by supporting our police, our men and women in blue. Thank you.
Michelle Merriweather, I have a couple of questions. The first question in terms of the actual piece here, it says to purchase cameras. I'm trying to figure out how many constitutes cameras. The next piece is in regard to the actual cameras themselves. I heard a mention of some of the standards that have to be followed by the Office of the District Attorney and Prosecutor, thank you. I just wanted to have an idea of, in terms of wearing the cameras, I wanted to understand who sets those parameters, how those parameters are set. We know we've had some incidents in the US in which cameras were cut off, so I want to get a better understanding of that. And then in terms of the camera distribution, I want to understand who in the field will be wearing the cameras as well.
So every officer will have a camera on them, along with the detectives. There's 36 total cameras that are going to be purchased. We usually put out about 7 to 8 officers per day, and then when the detectives also roll, they'll be assigned. As far as when they're on, anytime they have an interaction with a citizen, they will be activated, but in the background, they're constantly recorded. We will have administrative rights and management over that. We'll be able to see it. The officer won't have the ability to go in and edit or change or alter the video itself. And this system that we are requesting is a national body camera company. They deployed this throughout the entire US. This isn't just a local company. This is a well-named international company.
So I want to understand, so you said the cameras.
Hold on, I want to make sure I don't have too much of a back and forth. And speaking to the microphone, Director, I'll let you go a little bit, but just for the viewing audience at home, and that's our board of rules, is to, so I'll let this go back and forth a little bit more.
So I just wanted to make sure, so in answer to the cameras, you said everyone would have a camera?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'm good with the cameras then. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? And thank you. Any closing comments from the board? Motion by Trustee Dominguez, support by Trustee Joseph to approve item 7J as submitted. Clerk Leary, please call the roll.
Trustee Dominguez.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Bosberg. Aye. Treasurer LaFatta. Supervisor Echevetti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry. Aye.
Motion passes. Item B is the addendum. Thank you, Director Kirsten. There are no addendum on tonight's agenda. Item 9 is public comment. Please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 5 minutes. And I believe we might have a timer up on the screen here today. We just lost it a little bit. Come on up.
Just waiting for you on the timer.
No, Clerk Berry still has it up here.
Oh.
She'll start it. This apparently is going in now. She'll start when you start speaking. unless we're getting close on our IT. Whenever you start, she'll start up here.
Thank you. Good evening, Township Board and Township and Chesterfield Township residents. My name is John Spica. Elected officials need to lead by example. As residents, we should never settle for okay or what's going on by our elected officials on this board. Each and every one of them is on a job performance review. Should they be reelected for another term? Have they done what they promised to do? And have they represented Chesterfield Township in an ethical manner? My opinion is no, no, and hell no. I'm referring specifically to Clerk Berry, Supervisor Accavetti, and Trustee Bossberg. Clerk Berry is working contingent hours and collecting a full-time salary on the backs of all hard-working taxpayers of this township. In my opinion, that's equivalent to stealing. Any workplace that I know of would fire an individual for working part-time and collecting a full-time salary. As residents, we have to do our part and send a message to our elected officials that this type of behavior is unacceptable by not re-electing them. In my opinion, Clerk Berry has abused and breached the trust of the residents. She has taken advantage of her flexibility of coming and going as she pleases. For this and many other reasons, she should be fired by the residents. Supervisor Accavetti in the past 3.5 years has been an incompetent supervisor, in my opinion, who does not have the keen insight required to run day-to-day operations for Chesterfield Township. For example, just walk around the Township Municipal Building. The retaining wall needs to be redone in front of the building. The parking lot looks and feels like we landed on the moon. The grass needs fertilizing and water. The picnic tables need to be redone and replaced so you don't get a splinter in your rear. And Dan's focus has been on photo ops and putting a shovel in the ground and growing the township government by creating job positions for friends and friends of friends to hire within the township on the taxpayer's dime. When these individuals get hired, they're usually making top pay. At the last township meeting, Supervisor Accavetti said, "Integrity is our foundation." I say when Dan's lips are moving, he's lying. If he was so integrity-filled, then why hasn't he said or done anything to Clerk Berry about working contingent hours and collecting a full-time salary? That's because she is the fourth vote on this township board. As LaFata said in the Bay Voice, August 19th letter to the editor, Chesterfield Township does deserve better. Dan, you did nothing to take credit for public safety funding and many operational changes that resulted in lower property tax rates and record funding. Dan, you did nothing to bring MedStar to Chesterfield for full-time ambulance service to reduce costs. Paul LaFata also goes on to say Accavetti's hundreds of hard-fought improvements are an overstatement or another lie. All these improvements are parks, pathways, and the trash carts, while a list of maintenance projects totaling millions of dollars take priority to Accavetti's front-page glamour projects. The hundreds of Accavetti's improvements before completion will be over budget and without an annual maintenance cost or plan. To prove my point even further, that Accavetti is an incompetent supervisor, Paul goes on to say that a handicapped resident fell while leaving the township offices because of crumbling pavement that was over a year ago. Accavetti has done nothing to abate another accident or future liability. This incident is also on video. This is why Accavetti recruited his own candidate, Elliott, for treasurer, so she could be Dan's rubber stamp in the treasurer's office and the fifth vote on the township board. That would be a stranglehold. Accavetti doesn't want the residents of Chesterfield to know the truth, that he's over budget and has failed Chesterfield. Accavetti needs someone in the treasurer's office that will give him an open checkbook, no questions asked, no checks and balances, and a rubber stamp, and that candidate is Elliott. Does anyone really think Elliott would ever say no to Accavetti? Elliott is bought and paid for by Dan Accavetti. Just go to the Macomb County campaign finance site and follow Elliott's money trail. It all leads back to Accavetti. Accavetti should be fired and not reelected. This recipe is disastrous for Chesterfield Township. Clerk Berry, Accavetti, Vosburg, and Elliott are all working together to try to pull the wool over Chesterfield Township's residents. They're not working for you, they're
5
working for
seconds.
themselves. What else would our part-time clerk Barry and competent supervisor and rubber stamp Elliott
Over
find
5
jobs
minutes.
making over $100,000 with benefits? Nowhere else.
We're all done. I gave you like an extra 5 seconds there. If the board does want to change the rules, I'm more than willing to let you go as long as you
Thank
want.
you for the 5 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speak.
Any further comments from the public?
Terry Weston, 28605 Wales Drive. I just wanted to go on record and congratulate Hank Anderson on a great campaign and thank this township for the recount and everything that was involved in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Wendy Jones. There you go. Wendy Jones, Shamrock Street, Chesterfield. I trust you had a nice Labor Day with the family and friends. We just came out of a very toxic primary election. And as of yesterday, my family and I were attacked on Facebook going into the primary, the general election. I want to make one thing clear. I will not tolerate, nor will I give in to this toxicity. I will not retaliate, and I will run a clean campaign. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing no further public comment, I'll give the board, Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. First thing, Ms. Weston, thank you very much, and appreciate that. Backing up, Trustee Meeks already mentioned about Mr. Naldred passing here. Found him to be a very interesting man. Michigan State University bachelor, Wayne State University library of science, and I believe he was a librarian at Baker College professionally. Got to know him at the Historical Society. I believe Ms. Vosburg will have a few words about him. Very interesting man, wrote several things. He had a good periodical about Chesterfield. Interesting section on the sad events of 1964 that befell our township. Thought he was a good man. Kind of touching on it, we had the recall election on the 26th of August. We had 10 teams of 4 from the canvassing in the county that showed up here. Kept Ms. Weston and I on our toes all day long. I think it was about 8 hours. I believe, talking to Ms. Weston, that she cost her, whether she was giving the advice, it cost her $900 out of her pocket for the recount. And I believe the township paid about $5,000. And the outcome remained the same. During the day, I didn't get to really visit with you, and I said it before, I think you were a good person. And I think our discussion during that day, I think some of the counsel you received during the primary, I'm sure you would like to revisit. Moving away from that, the primary season, it was easy to see there's 3 members of this board. Treasurer LaFava, Trustee Joseph, and myself definitely were the subject of quite a campaign of misinformation and character assassination, several other things. I always got to ask the question, who would benefit from this? Who out of the blue had nothing better to do than create these things? Do the proverbial connecting the dots and figure out why would you want these 3 folks out? Well, they did get out in Nevada. And if anyone was a champion of the taxpayers' dollars, and that's what's running this government locally, is the taxpayers' dollars. It's not our private bank account. What we do an overdraft, we would. Treasurer LaFava was very diligent about that, and I'm sure this man does not have a political bone in his body. He did it because he cared about his career, he had his background, and he continued to do it, and like he says, he'll move on to his next second retirement, that's it. Part of the hit pieces, I don't want to look at it too much, but there was a report card that I referenced earlier during the campaign. It was a hit. And the only person on this board, and I don't mean to put him in a tight spot, that was adamant about, I am not involved in it, I'm paraphrasing, I had nothing to do with it, and no one asked me about it. And I didn't talk to anyone about being on a support card. It was trustee Domingue, the only person. The rest of the board, when this madness went on, these character assassinations, we were crickets. That was it. Okay, almost done. I was going to give you a warning. This is one half of my happy notes I was going to do for the night. I'm going to hold out the rest for perhaps our next meeting. We might have a show and tell. We might talk about a quote from C.S. Lewis, who stated, integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. Integrity is a noun. It isn't a buzzword. And I gotta be honest with you, I've heard it so many times during this last almost 4 years. I've been following these things from the day of Mr. Pollard. And the only thing I recall back in that election in 1992 was there was an attack on Mr. Pollard for this building. It was called Pollard's Palace. And many of the voters and residents were upset about it. That was a major thing. It did not generate into this garbage we saw here the past few months. Ethics, doing what's morally right. We may have a discussion later on, and maybe we'll have a show and tell about quid pro quo, a few other buzzwords, because when someone can actually do cartwheels and be happy that Mr. LaFata won't be around to bother anymore, that's telling. And I think one of our speakers may have touched a nerve on that. I'm not going to repeat it, and I'm not going to quote any more names. I believe the last thing I want to mention, we have someone speak, a candidate from the other side, who's subject to this kind of silliness, dragging her family into this madness. Again, I'll ask you, what is the purpose of that? What is the goal of trying to destroy another candidate? And it was obvious it's all lies. I'm very familiar with the candidate and her family. As a former administrator, I know her kids. I've known this person a long time. She's a very honorable human being, and I think she would probably fit into the job here very well. And, but at the same time, what went on yesterday involving her and her family, that is some dark ops. And I pray to God that somebody that's sitting on this board or a friend of this board isn't engaged in that kind of shenanigans. Let this thing, this whole election, move out the way it is. But if we have to start putting a spotlight on things, what is happening, I'd be glad to do that. And with that, I'll wish everyone a good night, and I hope you had a good holiday.
Thank you, Trustee Anderson. Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. First thing I'd like to point out, we've been working very hard. When I say we, I'm talking about an independent group of elected officials, candidates. We pool our money and we pay for the video services of the videographer that you see in the back. That's after months and months. The tipping point for me was something that Trustee Anderson alluded to. I was used to the microphone going out when I spoke, or the distortions, or the unexplained edits and absences of video or sound. But when a guy came into the audience before a board meeting, high-fived with the supervisor, passed out propaganda, went to the podium, destroyed the three of us, one right after the other, and then there was an opportunity to rebut that, and our microphones went out, I realized that if there's going to be a captured video, we were going to have to pay for it ourselves, and that's what we've done. The video can be seen unedited, very clear content. The camera is facing the podium, the speaker's podium. There's no edits, and there are no added noises. It captures the audio in the room, so it's this isn't tens of thousands of dollars of equipment. This is just a very skilled professional who's able to capture with speakers that are contained, microphones that are contained on that tripod. I noticed tonight that we've fixed it, or we're fixing it, And now the microphones that project sound in the room are not audible. So I hope that Transparent Chesterfield, which is a channel on YouTube, where this will be shown as quickly as it can be uploaded. Next board meeting, we will have provisions to live stream, true live stream, on multiple platforms via Facebook as well as YouTube. We can do that with a few $100s per meeting, yet a township this size with tens of thousands of dollars. And last go around, we swapped out these microphones for other microphones. It's more 5-figure expenses, and we still can't get it right. Again, I noticed, Mr. Supervisor, you push a lot of buttons down there. You can mute the whole thing. You have that, I don't know, Larry King looking microphone that's patched into the system as well. I think that if you had a sound engineer come in and look at what you're plugging in and why everybody seems to have an auxiliary cord plugged into the system, you might find that the 6 figures we've collectively spent over the last several years are being ineffectively used. This guy can do it on a moment's notice. You could live stream on multiple platforms, and the residents can see and hear everything that's being done. Several $100s a week. So I'll continue to pay it. I appreciate those who have chipped in to continue to pay that, because as Trustee Anderson said, it's about transparency, and we want people to see more of what goes on here and hear more of what goes on here, not less. I didn't have the opportunity to spend the entire day with the recount. I took some time off in the afternoon and got over here and had a very nice conversation with my friend, my new friend. I think Ms. Weston went into the campaign with good intentions. When she shared with me how much she spent on her campaign, I realized what happened to her. It was attempted by individuals who tried to recruit other people. They called me and said, I don't want to be any part of this black ops thing. I don't think they revealed it to you until far too late, until you were out about 15 grand, but lesson learned. I think you have some wonderful things to offer the township, and perhaps a more open discussion next go around would produce a better result. And I'm happy to introduce you to some reputable people. They don't operate in the shadows. They don't help steer things to unnamed post office boxes and go by collective names of private citizens, by private funds, and they send out anonymous mailers from the shadows. When one of the speakers tonight got up to talk about it, she said, I'm going to run a clean campaign. I'm going to focus on the issues, and I'm not going to tolerate the ugliness that she was exposed to over the weekend. I got some bad news, Ms. Jones. In an environment where your opponents, again, are one tiger short of a Netflix series, you're running at a distinct disadvantage. These people don't care about ethics. The more they talk about it, the more you know you're in trouble. Tell your family, tell your friends, they're going to get pieces mailed to their house. It's just how they operate. It's how it goes. And it's sad. They did it to a guy who served his country in Vietnam. They called him a traitor. Last week, steeped in ethics and class, true class, supervisor said, I'm happy that I won't be working with you in November. What a business meeting. What a great business meeting that is. That's how they operate. That's just how they operate. In the light of day, sunlight, a few $100s for a videographer is like a light switch coming on and cockroaches scurrying. You know? That's not how they operate. They operate in the shadows, and they operate in the dark. So tell your family to buckle up, because now the crosshairs are on you. Primary's over. It's not much use. They accomplished kneecapping and putting the stranglehold, as was discussed earlier. LaFata's going to be just fine. I agree with Trustee Anderson. LaFata's going to be just fine. Last board meeting, and before it gets away from that, I would like to thank the board for, before we get to the comments section, we did have a nice meeting tonight. Very good debate on some very important issues for our township, and it was done well. I'd like to see more of that. The board meeting last board meeting unfortunately ended the way they usually do. We had a discussion, very detailed discussion about our cannabis committee last board meeting, and we've been working on that committee for 2 years. There are people on this committee that I know to be integrity filled. They don't have to wear a t-shirt that says I have integrity, they just live it that way. That's how they operate. I've worked with them for 2 years. Police chief, fire chief, DPW directors, assistant directors, speakers that have come in, Trustee Anderson, Clerk Berry is the co-chair. I don't find her to be particularly credible, but in spite of that, we have a credible outcome. And we brought forward a proposal that involved a review of our work by our attorney. It was voted down, and some people were very out front and just said, I don't believe that this township has any need for any review of the recreational marijuana ordinance. I'm content with the opt-out. And they just said it very, very straightforward, and that's where it goes. Mr. Supervisor could have said the exact same thing and he got no grievance from me. But what's happened is what happens a lot. Say one thing in one room, and you have to come out in public and say, I believe in this. I gotta go forward with this. It's what I've said to everybody in closed rooms. But instead of living it and just saying, I don't think it's the right thing, he'd have to reveal that the great things that he told other people were not true. So he asserted something that was used in the primary. It's an integrity and lacking of credibility argument. So the guy that came to the podium and got the high fives when I got to rebut, the cameras went out, sent a letter to me saying that I was going to be ruined by an FBI investigation if I didn't resign my trustee position. I was okay to laugh that off. It's just crazy ramblings. But when the escalating threats started to include my family, sound familiar? My daughter, my wife and children, I went, as I said before, to Huron Point. I got practice and proficient with my firearm. I didn't take it off my hip. And I made a police report. And I watched my family, because that's how they operate. The same tactic was used last week, 2 weeks ago, when we finished the board meeting. And I simply asked, why the aversion to bringing the attorney in to give us some direction? The supervisor indicated to me that he's spoken to the FBI 5 times in the last month. 5 times. Credibility problems. The FBI is back in Chesterfield, and they go to the supervisor, because that's how the FBI operates, in case anybody's wondering. They go to the supervisor of the local municipality, they deputize him, and then he gives interviews to them that only they're a part of. This is the kind of nonsense. This is nonsense. It's a threat. There's credibility issues at the FBI. Have talked to me 5 times in the last month, and I'm not voting on this until the new board is seated. Sound right, Mr. Speaker? Right. Yep. So I'm okay with whatever the rules are. I'm okay with it. You want me to serve on a committee? You want me to research? You want me to come back to the board with a recommendation? I do that for 2 years. If she's honest, I'll tell you, and Clerk Berry will tell you, 2 years ago I said it's a waste of time. There are people on this board that are never, no matter what the marijuana crowd does or says, they've opted out and they're going to campaign on a just say no platform. I told her that 2 years ago. But if you want to sit in a room every month and we'll listen to the fire chief and the police chief and the DPW guy, and we'll talk about infrastructure and land use, and we'll meet with the planner. If you want to do that, it's an exercise in nothingness. They've already decided. They didn't let you in on it, but they've already decided. What you saw happen in the primary is the 3 used the clerk and her black ops. They decapped LaFata and threw her overboard. Now we don't have any room to meet on the cannabis until the new board is seated. It's just quite despicable. We will go forward. Our next cannabis committee meeting is actually tomorrow. We're going to discuss where we go and whether or not it's even valuable to continue or simply disband. The quid pro quo that we hear about every other week, my life would be easier if I would just engage in quid pro quo. It's just substitute quid pro quo for compromise. See, because if any idea that comes forward doesn't originate in the supervisor's office, there's no room on the team. It's just not going to happen. It's okay, that's just the way it goes. That's why he said he's happy that he's not going to be working with Lafado, because Lafado couldn't get access to the club either. He'd have to agree to everything. The synopsis and the compliments paid to me about being talented and charming, and I say that I'm not a lifetime politician, was rebutted by a guy that said, the lifetime politician, who said, it's not true, and I know because I've been in politics my whole life. Okay, exactly right. And that's what this is about. These are political decisions that get made here week in, week out. Lafado could care less about it, and they got him. They got him. It's sad, but as you go into the general, you can expect more of it. Any threat to that is going to be met the same way. That's how it goes. That's how they operate. When you point out that there are rules, they're only for the peasants. Sign ordinance, 45 days, not for us. And then once we put our signs up, everybody complains about it, we'll tell you we can't enforce that. That's silly. Nobody else enforces that. Treasurer Lafado points out that you shouldn't use the township credit card to buy meals for yourself and your staff. Well, we do that all the time. You can't enforce that. Everybody does that. So why have the rule? Why have the rule? Because the month prior, you were the integrity-driven leader. We'll continue to do our best to bring the residents clean, unedited footage of every meeting. We'll do that until we have several meetings here that are provided without edits and unexplained distortions. Again, I'd like to take a look at all the things you have plugged into the system, but I don't run the show, so I really can't. Last thing I wanted to say, Mr. Accabetti, they were referred to tonight, I wrote it down here, they were referred to as glamour shots. I know you got a couple scheduled, and you made a point to say that I made fun of you. I never made fun of a township, State of the Township address. What I found amusing was the incessant use of integrity and the word team. And I remember my coach telling me, and we've seen it on t-shirts, there's no I in team. There's a couple in Accabetti. And so when you get to your big spotlight next week, and you talk about all the wonderful things that you've done, somehow you brought in the veterans, you brought in the number of other things that really had nothing to do with you. A donated piece of property is somehow your philanthropic work. The state of Michigan brings in the veteran, that's your work. So I applaud you, and don't break your arm patting yourself on the back next week. I'll be at work. I can't take the time off. I'm sure you'll post it on the township website. That'll come in crystal clear, I'm sure of that. And I'm sure the department heads who are forced to go to the meeting will be able to have you autograph, whatever, and applaud you as well. So I wish you the best next week with the groundbreakings and the state of the townships. I hope they bring in plenty of campaign donations and it just goes swimmingly for you. Moving forward in the election campaign, I'm running with Trustee Anderson. We're going to talk about the things that we think we've done. You're not going to hear anything negative about my opponents in any piece. Certainly, we've talked about it. I'm proud of the work that I've done with Trustee Domingue, some of the other trustees and board members. So we'll be talking about those accomplishments, and you're not going to hear anything about anybody's children or parents or anything like that in any of the campaign pieces or any of the literature that we discuss. And as it relates to the issues moving forward, I would like to stay on top of these, depending on your comments tonight, Mr. Accabetti. happy to pick up where you leave off next go around, or whatever you'd like to do. But the politics here have gotten quite brutal, and you won't see it out of us on our way to November. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Joseph. Trustee Domingue?
I'm good tonight, thank you.
Trustee Lansbury?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I want to speak about Alan Aldred. It's already been talked about twice before. It's very sad, the passing of one of our residents, Alan Aldred, who was so involved in so many things in the community. And especially for us at the Historical Society, he was the author of numerous books on local history. He attended many of the historical events. He was the curator, most recently volunteered to be the curator for the Historical Society and the collection. And he was newspaper editor for years and years. While he couldn't always attend all of our events, you could always count on seeing him the last half hour taking pictures all over the place. So he did a wonderful job of putting all that together. Just very sorely missed, and just very sad. Words can't begin to describe the sadness and how we will miss him. So thank you.
Treasurer LaFleur?
Based on Supervisor Zachary's comment, I'm looking forward to not having to work here for the next 4 years. That's probably a good thing. In turn, I probably won't have to listen to him trying to reassure himself about his integrity and no quo or quid. Kind of goes hand in hand. I have to admit, in my 3.5 years, I must have been effective enough to unhinge him to the point where he did what he did. I don't have a problem with it personally. I guess it's what you call politics. What should start happening in the township, though, and maybe I'll make a list and outline them, is maybe somebody should start addressing the real issues in the township. The increasing water rates that happen every year, and how we're going to control them, how we need to look at some efficiencies to try and keep them lower. Whether or not we want to take a Northwest Interceptor over with a $1.7 million repair bill. There's a whole list of them. They've been taking back seats to Marble Paddle Parks, Brandenburg Fish Habitats, nature centers. Parking lots need to be fixed. But there's some real issues that are out there looming in the township. Maybe the people that are running for election should come to the podium when they see these list of issues, and I'd be glad to publish them, and how they're going to fix the issues. And it's not ethics and it's not integrity. These are issues. How do you fix the issues? It's not efficiency. Efficiency is an equation. You need to do some studying. You just don't put that on your flyer and say, I'm going to make it more efficient. They're buzzwords. You don't tell somebody you're going to lower taxes when you have no ability to lower those taxes. So with the elected officials, or the officials that are running, which won't be me, should look at addressing the issues that are within the township. They're not going to go away, and somebody should be up to the podium if they're running for office saying, well, this issue, and this is how I'm going to fix it. I'm not going to avoid it. This is how I'm going to fix the issue. Whether it takes legal counsel, it takes a good engineer to understand why we have a parking lot, like Veterans Memorial parking lot, where at the end of the day, we've got 10 engineering changes after we pay for an engineering firm to design it. I don't know how with all these drawings and everything, we could have 10 approved changes with that. It doesn't make sense to me. In my past world, everybody signed off on the drawing. If that drawing was that bad, I would consider looking for another engineering firm. The township really has issues. The issues for which should be addressed shouldn't be the person address the issues. The only thing is the issues don't get addressed, and we look at buzzwords to cover the fact that issues aren't resolved. We look at it's, liquid, it's, it's moving evolutions, scope changes, there are problems. So the township township residents need the issues and the problems resolved. They don't need excuses, and they don't need for somebody to say, well, it's integrity or it's ethics. Neither one of them solve the issues. It's really getting into the nitty-gritty, looking at the quality of the event, what the event costs, how it's controlled, who's responsible, and somebody being held to the responsibility to make sure the end product was given to the residents because they paid for it and it's what they need. Thank you.
Clerk Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. My comments are going to be brief this evening. Would like to thank the board very much for approving the purchase of the high-speed document scanner for our records coordinator and records department. It's a critical piece of equipment that any records department needs. We have been kind of keeping things together with scotch tape and bubble gum in that department for a while. It's something that records coordinator Greenia has done an outstanding job doing the best that she could with what she had. Again, inferior equipment or equipment that was not meant for that intended, that was not the intended purpose of it. Kind of been cobbling things together, and she's done an outstanding job with that, made light years of progress just with what she had, and I'm amazed by that. I'm very eager to see, and I think the board will be very pleased with what she will be able to do with this piece of equipment that you have approved tonight. So I'd like to thank you very much for that. I think we're going to see a considerable amount of progress in the area of records management here for the township, and the availability now of more and more records online, which is our ongoing mission to secure and maintain transparency with regards to the records here at the township. So I'd like to thank you very much for that. Also would like to remind everyone that on September 17th, in addition to the State of the Township that I believe is taking place that day, it's also Constitution Day. Constitution Day is something that not a lot of folks are familiar with, or if they are, they're not sure why we celebrate it. It's also the day that we celebrate citizenship for all those who are naturalized as well as born here and enjoy citizenship, and it is to commemorate the day in 1787 that 39 very brave men signed their names to the Constitution that actually gave us our framework and governing documents for this country, which we all enjoy those rights today, and many have fought and died for them. So that is why we celebrate Constitution Day. We celebrate our citizenship as well as the bravery of those men who signed our Constitution into law in 1787. So I'd like to ask everyone to remember that and celebrate that on the 17th of September. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of quick ones. Groundbreaking for Brainwood Park will be toward the end of September. That park will be closed to the public during that construction all the way probably into next spring. The path along the Nature Center from Sugarbush and Embassy to Hooker is beginning to get opened up a little bit more with help from Detroit Edison. There's a power line there that they spent a lot of time on clearing, and that will not only help with that opening up that path for the Nature Center, but also with stability of the energy grid over on that piece on Hooker that it constantly has problems. And Weber Paddle Park will be fully implemented next spring. You will see some benches and some of the furnishings going in this fall, and complete utilization there. Two quick announcements on road projects through the Michigan Department of Transportation. These projects that you're seeing are part of the maintenance program with MDOT, and we don't necessarily get as much advance notice when their maintenance teams are going to be there. One is along Washington from Pollard Park around 94 to Gratiot, and I've had more phone calls and complaints than I can count in the last couple of weeks because they only did the joints so far. and that actually feels like a speed bump about every 15 minutes. It's almost impassable. There will be a cap put on that stretch of road. That will be a brand new surface. Another maintenance project through the Michigan Department of Transportation is Gratiot, which is causing substantial traffic backups and will continue for the next coming weeks. It's between 23 and 24. It's affecting 23-mile road, both directions at Gratiot, along with mostly the northbound Gratiot all the way by 22-mile. But that is, we're doing a tremendous amount of slab replacements and curb replacements along that mile stretch, so that's greatly appreciated. This weekend, starting tomorrow, there's a pretty good chance you're going to start seeing some traffic in and out of Selfridge for through Sunday. And that is because of a partnership with London's, this is kind of a cute little saying, Sky Drive In. So it's London, Ontario's air show is going to be happening this weekend. Due to COVID, the 7 United States-based demonstration units are not going to be able to be based in London where that air show is going to be at. They're actually going to be based at Selfridge, which is really fantastic, I think, for us and our residents. And Thunderbirds, you might see coming in and out, along with the F-35s, F-22s, and a number of other demonstrations that will be housed here at Selfridge for that air show this weekend. So keep an eye out for some additional air traffic, and that's what they will be servicing our neighbors to the east. Our next regular board meeting is September 22nd at 7 p.m. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by trustee Dominguez, support by trustee Rosberg to adjourn. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.